Today we're going to do something a little bit different in the line of Shattered Podcast. The Shattered Podcast we've done in the past deals with substance abuse, whether it be drugs or alcohol. But it's not always substance abuse that can cause people grief and trauma in their life. And today I have Shannon Tallant with me, and we're going to talk about his life and the disabilities. So, Shannon, start us off from when you were born and what your life was like when you first come into the world.
I was born back in 1974, and I was born with a birth defect called spina bifida. Now, spina bifida, in a nutshell, is a situation where the spinal canal does not close and is left open up until birth, and leaves the nerves and the nerve endings exposed outside of the body. Sometimes they're not always outside the body, but the body cavity, but they can still be inside, and there's a hole that just does not close during the while the fetus is maturing. And depending on what level of the spine, whether it be lumbar, thoracic, what area part of the spine is what anomalies or disabilities are the outcome of that. Mine, as specifically at L4 and L5, that's where the hole was when I was born, and so that affected my bowel, bladder. It affected the way that I walk. I have a gait that's abnormal, and I also had hydrocephalus, meaning there's fluid on my brain, and I had to have a shunt tube implanted very shortly after birth to be able to take that fluid off of my brain. And so, like I said, there's different levels of the spina bifida that affect different parts of the body and how the outcome is. And so, like I said, when I was at L4, L5, it affected my bowels, my bladder, my gait. I was club-footed when I was born. I wore braces up until I was probably 25. And finally, I just decided, I want to try something, and I quit wearing them. And so, I to this day, I still don't wear them, and it probably has affected me some, but I compensate for it,
Right.
So, the doctors told my parents, back then they didn't know a whole lot about spina bifida at all. It was something that was very new to the medical field. The medical field back then was not nearly as advanced as it is today,
Right.
so they didn't know a whole lot about it. So several of the children that was born with spina bifida, they didn't live to be adults or even teenagers. Some of them didn't. That my parents were told that I would be a vegetable. I would never walk, never would talk, just would be a vegetable, and that they should consider placing me somewhere for other people, are at that have similar disabilities. And my parents, they had a, I guess, more willpower.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't going to do that to their child, and so they left me in the home. I grew up in my home. I have two older brothers, and I was the baby by about 10 years. And my parents' prayer is what they depended on a lot. I come from a very religious background, I guess you could say, from a Pentecostal background. So there's a lot of prayer in my home,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why my parents was raised, and that's the way they raised me, and that's what got me through life. They were always they always pushed me to accomplish whatever it was that I could accomplish. Now, I was, to a degree, I was sheltered. There was things that I wasn't allowed to do, and things that places I couldn't go, but they always made sure that I pushed myself,
Right.
do what I could do. And so my dad, for instance, uh, I didn't walk till I was 3 years old, and it just happened one day out of the blue. But my dad, when I would crawl and pull up on things and crawl around the floors, he would take my toys away from me and put them on the other side of the room
Mm-hmm.
to make me go get them again.
Right.
And that's what motivated me. My parents are what motivated
Right.
me. I spent weeks at times, sometimes months, in hospitals. People with spina bifida have a lot of surgeries to repair, the defects and things. I know I've had well over 60 operations throughout my life. I'm 46 years old, soon to be 47, and I've actually lost count of the operations that I've had to repair things. And one time when I think I was in the third grade, I spent a whole quarter, 9 weeks in the hospital, and then I was home recovering after that.
Right.
So I've been in and out of hospital all my life. So
Were you homeschooled or were
no, I actually went to a public school.
Okay.
I was in a public school. I went to Winthrop School and started there in kindergarten, and I graduated at the 12th grade. And that was a difficult time in my life. A lot of the kids did not understand,
Right.
some things that I was facing and going through, and I was bullied in school. I was made fun of a lot. That's what motivated me as well during my life. Because I got sick of that.
Right.
So I decided, I'm going to make something of myself. I'm going,
And you did.
I got it past it. It's not something that I like to dwell on, but it did happen.
Right.
And it still happens to kids today. And
Unfortunately, it does.
It does. But I didn't let it affect me to where I didn't want to do not do anything.
Mm-hmm.
That did not take control of my life. I did not let it control me. It did bother me, but I didn't let it take control of me.
Tell me about your teenage years.
Oh, well, they were some fun years. Like I said, I didn't let my handicap, disability, whatever you want to call it, I didn't let it keep me from doing things I wanted to do. I grew up as a child, even through my teenage years, with neighbor kids that I went to school with that were some of my best friends. And I played outside with them. We played basketball. We rode bicycles. We played in the creek. We went fishing. And but as a teenager, parts of my life were not the same as other kids that I was around all the time. I didn't have a girlfriend in high school like most of the boys did.
Right.
And like I said, my religious background, my parents didn't let me go to a lot of places that the other kids went.
Right.
So there was not a lot of things that I got to do with the other kids. And also a lot of the other kids, they didn't include me in things that they did. I did a lot of things by myself. At school, I was by myself a lot at school, but when we get home, I had neighbor friends and kids that I played with all my life. My parents, they didn't allow me to drive as a teenager. So after I graduated high school and got my first job, my mom told my dad, look, we're going to have to let him drive because I'm tired of taking him to work every day. So I learned to drive, and my feet and legs did not function properly. So we weren't too sure if if I was going to be able to drive. So we had a pickup that at the time it was a standard, and that's actually what I learned to drive on, was a standard, and they had no clue that I would be able to operate a vehicle like that, and that's what I learned to drive on. So, and I've been able to drive all these years. They thought they was going to have hand controls, and I at the time a physician had to sign off and say that I needed hand controls. And I was a patient at Arkansas Children's Hospital all of my life, mostly. I started going there when I was 9 years old. And up until they finally told me, you've aged out in my 20s. We can no longer treat you as a patient. But anyway, this doctor, I approached him one day while I was at clinic, and I asked him if he would sign off on me having hand controls. And he looked at me. He said, Shannon, can you move your feet and legs? I said, yes, sir. He said, well, then no, I will not authorize you to have hand controls. You can drive a car. And came home and drove a car. And I have been all these years.
What inspired you to become a nurse?
I guess I would say that I felt an obligation, really, because of all the years that I had been in and out of the hospital. Believe it or not, if you talk to my mom, she would tell you I could speak medical lingo and terminology as well as the doctors and nurses did when I was 9 or 10 years old, So that was my element. I felt comfortable in that element. And like I said, I felt an obligation as much as anything, because they had done so much for me throughout my life. I pretty much was a guinea pig all my life, Dee. If a new technology or a new procedure, anything came out that was new and they felt like it would benefit me, we tried it. We did it. And sometimes it failed, but we always went back to the drawing board and was able to figure something else out, So there I felt an obligation. When I graduated high school, I received a small scholarship to go to the technical college. It was Cossatot Technical College back then, but it's what they call CCCUA now, or the U of A. And so I let people pressure me into some type of a business degree because of my health and my disability. They weren't sure what I would be able to be capable of doing. And so I did. I went and got an associate's degree in computer applications. And I hated every minute of it. I absolutely hated it. I hated sitting behind a desk. I did not want to do that. I didn't feel like that's what my calling in life was, know. So I also was fortunate enough to receive some financial assistance from Arkansas Rehabilitation Services. Great organization. They helped a lot of people accomplish a lot in life. And so I had a caseworker, I guess you would call him, and he called me one day. And he asked me, after I'd received my associate's degree, he asked me what I was doing. And between the time I had gotten my associate's degree and the time that he had spoke with me, I had went to EMT school. And I was working for the local ambulance service here in Sevier County and in Little River County as well. It was the same company back then. And so he asked me what I was doing. And I told him, I said, I went to EMT school and I'm working on an ambulance now. And he said, well, what do you really want to do? What do you want to do with your life? And I told him, I said, Dwayne, I want to be a nurse. He said, really? He said, we put you through school for that business degree. And I said, I hated every minute of it. And he said, we really should encourage you people that are in your situation to do other things, such as become a lab tech or a radiation tech. He said, and you want to be a nurse? I said, yes, I really want to be a nurse. And he said, well, I'll tell you what. He said, you go take the entrance exams And if you're accepted, I'll put you through nursing school. So I applied here in DeQueen, and I also applied over at Texarkana College. And I was actually accepted into both programs. And I decided to get into this program here in DeQueen because it started sooner and I would get out quicker. And I called him and told him, I said, Dwayne, I've taken my entrance exams in 2 separate places. And I said, by the way, I was accepted in both programs. He said, well, I made a deal. He said, I got to keep my end of the bargain up. He said, I'll put you through nursing school. And so they did. Arkansas Rehab, they put me through nursing school. And my life's been a circus ever since. But that's where I feel like, it was my calling. And I've enjoyed every minute of it. Unfortunately, things have happened. When I was 16 years old, I got sick, and I lost a lot of weight in just a short few days. I lost like 20 pounds in 2 weeks, and we couldn't figure it out. And like I said, I was a patient at Children's Hospital at the time, and we went to the doctor to figure out what was going on. And they, at the time, it was diagnosed as chronic renal insufficiency, which chronic means it's happening over a period of time.
Right.
But my kidneys were failing, and my nephrologist, which is the kidney doctor, he told me, he said, you're probably either going to be on a transplant list or on dialysis by the time you're 20. So they kept monitoring me every 3 to 6 months from that period on. And I actually made it until I was 34 years old before that period in my life came. And so
You've been on dialysis since 34?
Yes. I've been on dialysis since February of 2009. That's when I started. And at the time, I was a traveling nurse. I decided back in 2004 that I wanted to get out and see the world. I wanted to get away from home. So I became a traveling nurse. And at the time, I started in 2004. Back then, those traveling agency companies, they didn't offer benefits. That's the reason why you make the wages that you could make,
right,
because they didn't offer benefits. So there was several years of my life while I was traveling that I didn't have insurance, medical insurance, so I didn't go to a doctor. Not realizing during those years that my situation, my health was actually deteriorating. And when they say chronic kidney disease, it is happening over a period of time.
Right.
So you don't always notice things, even though things are progressing not well, then, I didn't feel sick.
Right. It was like a gradual.
Yes, it was very gradual. And so I decided that I wanted to go. I'm a licensed practical nurse, have been since 1998. And I decided I wanted to go back to RN school. And I decided that while I was at New Mexico at the time. And I decided I wanted to go back to RN school. So the hospital that I was working at told me, we'll buy your contract out and put you through nursing school. You have to give us a year in return. So I decided that I wanted to go back. And while I was in nursing school, I got sick. And so they bought my contract out, and I got benefits. And so when I got my insurance, I just decided one day I probably need to go have a physical done, and get checked out, because it's been a long time since I had, So I went to see a doctor there that I actually worked with in the hospital, and they did a whole workup, lab test, the whole workup. And a couple days later, the doctor called me. I was getting ready for work one evening. I worked the night shift at that time. And she asked me what I was doing. And I said, well, I'm getting ready for work. She said, no. She said, you're going to the hospital right now. She said, there's already standing orders, already admitting orders for you when you get there. She said, you go straight to the medical floor. When you get there, do not go to work. And then she told me all that was going on and what was really happening. And then things just kind of spiraled down from there.
What was wrong at that time?
Well, I had a bladder infection, which is what led to my kidney diseases, chronic urinary tract infections. And so I had a very, very serious urinary tract infection that she was not sure that she could even take care of.
Right.
And then there's two enzymes that they monitor patients with kidney disease called creatinine and BUN, and mine was really, really elevated. And they told me at the time, you're staring dialysis in the face really quick. And I was in denial at the time, when I did start dialysis, they had to insert a catheter in my chest to do it because I was very hard-headed. I was not going to go through that. So the access that they place in your arms called a fistula, I didn't have it placed. And they had told me years before, you need to get this placed and get ready because it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I never would do it. And so finally, to make a long story short, when I started dialysis, I was feeling sick one day and went to the hospital, and of course those enzymes had gotten worse. The numbers had kept creeping up, and the doctor came in and he finally said, "Shannon, today's the day." And my world fell apart. I took care of sick people. I was not supposed to be a sick person, and so, like I said, my world just crashed and crumbled. And so they inserted the catheter, and I started that very day. I mean, I had no prep time whatsoever.
Did that end your nursing?
Not at the time. And then actually, I would say my nursing's not ended.
Well, I mean, traveling nurse.
Oh, yes, as a traveling. Well, actually, no, Dee. At the time, I probably stayed in 2000. That happened in February. And later on, in 2000, at the end of 2010, I decided I still wanted to be an RN.
Right.
And I decided then that I wanted to come back home to finish because they had the RNAC program starting out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided I wanted to come back home to finish. And so I moved back home in 2011 in January, and I worked up until that time. And so I had to transfer dialysis facilities because I was in center 3 days a week for 4 hours a day. And so I transferred back home, and I went on disability then because it was just very hard for me to juggle a dialysis schedule and then work, because at the time I was having to drive to Mount Pleasant, Texas for dialysis, and that was 60 miles from my home one way. So I was driving 180 miles round trip 3 days a week. And so it was just very hard to juggle my schedule with work and dialysis. So I applied for disability, and it took me several months to be approved and get on disability. And so I was in dialysis one day over at Mount Pleasant, and there was a lady over there recruiting patients to do the same type of dialysis that I was doing. It's called hemodialysis, but to do it in your home. And she was from Tyler, Texas, and she approached me and she asked me if I would be willing to try it. And I said, you know what? This was back when gas was well over $4 a gallon. It was back in 2011. And I was like, you know what? If it'll save me a whopping gas bill every month and keep me from having to drive 180 miles a day, 3 days a week, I am willing to try it. Yes. So you had to have a care partner back then. You could not do it alone. And of course, when I moved back home in that period, I moved back with my parents. And so my mom, she agreed. We talked it over. My mom agreed that she would be my care partner. The only thing was I had to learn to insert my own needles because I use needles.
Right.
And she said, you got to do that. She said, I will not do that at all. But other than that, I will do whatever it takes, whatever it is that I have to do to help you, I will do. And so we went to Tyler, Texas for 6 weeks to do the training. And I became a home hemo patient then. And I've been doing that ever since. I do it at home now, 4 nights a week, 8 hours a night. So, and my mom, she's still my care partner. She still works hard, and to make sure that I'm as comfortable as possible.
Good.
So,
Tell me your health status today.
well, right now, I would say I'm in fair health. It's definitely not good. Could be much better. I have other problems going on besides my kidney disease, but was always told when I started dialysis that I was not a kidney transplant candidate because of other underlying medical conditions and because of all the surgeries that I've had, that it would hinder them being able to access the abdominal cavity in a timely manner to
Right.
to transplant the healthy kidney. So I was always told that I would not be a transplant candidate. And I have a fistula placed in both arms for my access, and the reason being is the one over on my right arm, it's no longer functional. And when it went bad, it clotted off. And when it went bad, my doctor that I'm currently under there at Idabel, he just was not ready to accept it. He's like, I think we can save it. I think we can. I'm not ready to let this go. And he had an acquaintance of his that was also a physician at Medical City in Dallas, and he works with vascular accesses, and he wanted me to go see him to get a second opinion.
Right.
And so I went to Dallas to Medical City, and I saw this doctor, and they did an ultrasound, and he came in and he told me, he said, unfortunately, he said, we're not going to be able to save it. And he's like, we've got to work and do everything that we can to save, to keep your existing functioning, as long as he says, because you don't have any options.
Right.
When that one's going, you've only got two arms.
Right.
There's not very many other options. He said, so we got to do all that we can to save that one that you're currently using. And he asked, he said, why haven't you approached transplant in all the years that you've been on dialysis? And I said, well, I've always been told I'm not a candidate. And he told me, he said, you know what? He said, I kind of feel different. He said, I'm going to tell you, he said, from everything that you've told me about your history, he said, it's not going to be easy. He said, it's going to be a very hard process. He said, it's going to be hard on you as a patient. It's going to be hard on us as a transplant team. He said, but I'm not going to tell you that it's impossible. He said, I think we can make it work. He said, I at least want to try. So from that point, and that's been coming up on a couple of years ago now, that gave me a little extra ray of hope, that somebody does believe that there is a possibility that this can happen.
Have you been on a transplant list for 2 years now?
No, I have not. I have actually not made the list yet.
Okay.
Short time after I spoke with him, and I applied. You have to just fill out a paper application to start the process. I applied, and a couple of weeks after that, I had carpal tunnel syndrome in my hand, and I decided that I was ready to have surgery to have that repaired because it was really bothering me, and I was losing function and muscle in my hand and arm. So I decided to go ahead and have the surgery, and they called me to set me up with a surgeon, to see the surgeon first. And I told them, I said, I'm about to have surgery. I said, can we hold off on that until that I get that taken care of? And they said, yes, definitely. Just call us back when you're ready. Well, they sent me a letter a few weeks later saying that they had taken my name out of the application process because I had decided to hold off, but that I would be eligible to do it again in 6 months. So in April of this year, I reapplied, and they actually gave me appointments to visit with a transplant nurse over the phone, and then in June to go have my workup done, my lab work, x-rays, EKG, things like that. But actually they got a little bit ahead of themselves. I was supposed to see the transplant surgeon first, and they called me yesterday to cancel those appointments and make me an appointment with the transplant surgeon. So I have a transplant appointment with the surgeon in June. So I'm actually still in the process of getting, and things are happening. I have appointments So I'm still excited about, there's still that possibility there.
What things do you need to take care of before the transplant can be possible?
Well, I have to take care of my bladder to begin with. When I was a young child, the doctors made me an artificial bladder. Actually, it's not an artificial bladder. They took parts of my bowel to make another bladder and placed it in my abdomen. So I catheterized with a catheter, in and out cath, all of my life basically. And back then, when I was a child, insurance companies, they wouldn't pay for you to use a sterile catheter every time that you catheterized. So I was having to reuse catheters. And that's what caused my chronic urinary tract infections that caused my kidney disease. So we have to figure out how to keep that from happening again. I still have my native bladder that I was born with, plus I still have this one. So we have to decide, which one of these is it feasible to use, or we will go back to the drawing board and start all over with some other procedure. But we've got to fix that situation first. That's the first and foremost thing, because a new kidney is no good to me if that bladder, if I keep having that same problem. Plus, there's some issues, like I said, with my bowels that have to be fixed, and I do have to lose a significant amount of weight. They have an orientation video that they send all the new patients that are starting the transplant process. It's an orientation video that you watch about the whole transplant process, and in there they stress, that transplant candidates should have less than 30% body fat. I won't say how much I weigh right now, but I'm right at 40%. So I've got to lose a pretty significant amount of weight also, and that's going to take time as well. This is not a process that's going to just happen in the next few short months. It's going to be years, and I'm expecting that.
Right, and it's not an emergency, right?
No, because I am on dialysis. It's not an emergency. Dialysis is working well for me right now. Currently, like I said earlier, I'm doing dialysis at home. I do it 4 nights a week, 8 hours a night. I'm on dialysis 32 hours a week. That being said, most patients that are still patients in a center, they go 3 days a week, 4 hours a day. They get 12 hours of dialysis a week. Right. I get 32. I get nearly 3 times the amount of dialysis that a normal hemodialysis patient gets. So that has afforded me to be able to do a lot of other things, right, and be a lot more active than some of these other patients. So right now dialysis is going very well for me, and which I'm very grateful for, because if I had not been approached and asked if I wanted to try this, I would not be the active person that I am today, which I'm very grateful for. And I've had such a great medical team. Ever since I've started on dialysis, it's not been the same team that's followed me ever since I started, but I've always been fortunate enough to have the right people, that's in my corner, that's doing these things for me, and getting me where I am today. Doctors and nurses both, they're great.
Shannon, I have the utmost respect for you, because you have, ever since the day you were born, you've had health complications, and you don't let that slow you down.
No, I try not to. Sometimes I don't have a choice, and it does. But a wise man, when I was in high school, he had a picture on his wall. He was the superintendent of my high school. He had a picture on his wall, and it was a quote, and the quote said, "Your attitude, not your aptitude, determines your altitude."
Yes.
And that's that. A lot of people hear a lot of things, a lot of quotes that stay with them through that is the one quote, or saying that I have remembered all of my life, and I've tried to apply that to my life.
Right. Well, you have.
And I have. I try to keep the best of attitudes. It's not always easy.
Right.
I have days that I don't want to crawl out of bed. I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to see anybody. But
I don't think I've ever seen you that you didn't laugh and have a smile on your face.
I try, there's times, Dee, probably I had a smile on my face that I really wasn't smiling on the inside,
We all have done that before.
I can't let that get me down,
Right.
Because there are a lot of people that are in a lot worse situation than I am.
Exactly.
That
old saying.
Even those people have smiles on their face,
right.
And they're laughing and carrying on, but somewhere deep inside, something's going on with them.
Right.
Nobody knows about, and they're worse off than I am.
You
know? So I always try to keep that thought in the back of my head. Hey, look, somebody's got it worse off than you.
Right.
So
it's like that old saying. I used to complain that I had no shoes until I met a man that had no feet.
Had no feet. You're exactly right. And I've seen that. You know, firsthand. But I try to keep a positive attitude, and like I said, there's times when it's not so positive, but I keep going.
Well, I wish you all the best. I hope in June, when you go to the transplant surgeon, he gives you the clearance.
I do too.
And once he gives you the clearance, that puts you on the list, right?
Actually, I got to start the testing things, to be tested, and I honestly really don't know at what point you go on the list.
Right.
I don't know what procedure.
Or even how long the list is.
Exactly. I have been told by someone that knows, that the longer that you have been on dialysis, the closer to the top of the list you get.
Oh, wow. That's good.
And also, there's not only on the list, there's not just the list for me to be on to be able to get a transplant. Someone could donate.
Exactly.
And a friend or a family member, there's a testing process that we both have to go through to make sure that we're compatible.
Mm-hmm.
But, a living donor is also an option.
Right.
And there are so many different new things coming out with transplant now. They're transplanting organs, not just kidneys, but organs that are actually not compatible, and I've also been told that in the kidney organ transplant that they're transplanting kidneys now that have been affected with hepatitis C. They're actually transplanting kidneys that the donors have had hepatitis C in the past, or actively have it, actually, because hepatitis C now can be treated. They treat hepatitis C with a pill now, orally, and they'll treat it. I'm not sure if they treat the donor before the transplant or they treat the recipient after the transplant, but they can now transplant kidneys that are affected by hepatitis C.
Wow.
As well as, like I said, mismatched, uncompatible.
Right.
They can still, there's something they do where they can transplant those kidneys.
To help more people get them.
Yes. So basically, I would say that actually makes the list a little shorter now than it used to be.
That's awesome.
And that's great. Yes, it is.
Is there anything else you want to add? You're just you've had an incredible journey, and you still have such a positive attitude.
Well,
and I wish you all the best.
I would not have made the person that I am today without the people that have been in my life. I've had a lot of people in my corner all of my life.
Right.
There's been a lot of prayers prayed for me, a lot of friends. And I can never repay these people for being my friend or doing the things that they've done for me. But it makes me want to be makes me want to be a friend,
Yeah.
I want to repay some, I want to pay it forward is what I'm trying to say, I guess. Because there's been so many people that have helped me out, gave me jobs, made sure that, that I worked. And so they included me in everything that I did. So I just, I want to say thank you basically to everybody that's ever had a hand in raising me,
right,
and making the person that I am today.
You are an incredible person, and you're a good friend to me too. And
Yes,
I'm going
Dee,
to pray for you every step of the way.
I appreciate it very much.
And thank you for coming in today, Shannon.
I've enjoyed this. And if there's anyone out there that is in a similar situation or just needs someone to talk to about a situation that they've got going on, whether it's similar or not, I'm here for anybody.
Absolutely.
And also, I would like to add that I've started a Facebook page for my journey for a kidney transplant. If anyone would like to follow that, and there's not much going on it right now, but hopefully in the time to come, it gets a little bit more active. But
we'll post the link to the Facebook page.
Great.
On this podcast.
Good. Sounds good.
And any contact info that you would like to put for anybody that would like to
contact me,
talk to you about their journey as well as yours. And so whatever information you want to put out, we'll put it out there.
I'll be glad to.
Thank you very much, Shannon.
You're welcome.